So I had a client reach out to me today to ask me if 22 is too young to buy your first home. So stay tuned today because I'm going to talk about when I think is too young to buy a home. Hi, I'm Jennifer Queen with the Jennifer Queen team and RE/MAX Professionals here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And today I'm going to talk to you about my take on when is too young to buy your first home. So keep in mind that you are on a Realtors YouTube channel here today, and a realtor that truly believes that real estate is one of the most solid and best investments you can make and a great gateway to financial freedom and early retirement. So yes, that is where you have landed, and I apologize. So I will say that in the majority of cases, I am actually going to say that you should buy property as young as you can comfortably do so, with a few caveats. If you are a little bit young and perhaps of the mindset that you could always miss a mortgage payment or two or do anything that kind of ruins your credit, or there's some financial instability there, then I would say perhaps not the best idea. Perhaps looking at renting and kind of getting comfortable on paying monthly bills would be the best starting point for you. The next caveat I would say is if there's a chance that you're going to want to sell your home within the next, I'd say 5 years or less, because you have to, you're moving out of the province, or you aren't sure this is the place you want to stay, then it might not be a good idea either. Usually building wealth through real estate comes over time. So time is of the essence in that you want to stay in the property and build that equity over time. This isn't traditionally a get-rich-quick scheme. This is a long-term wealth building, get-rich-slow scheme. Another factor, particularly if you're young and you might be looking at a little bit more expensive home than what you're quite comfortable living in, if you are unwilling at all to, say, have roommates or additional sources of income, then it might not be an option for you. I think that those that do the best when buying their homes young are the people that seem to buy, say, a 3-bedroom home and with a plan of renting 2 rooms out to offset their costs, and then it keeps them lean with that ability to live affordably, of course, while not putting yourself at financial risk. If you are not good at living with others or aren't open to considering this as an option, then truthfully, yeah, like maybe a 1-bedroom apartment might be better for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's just different ways of doing it. And if you're trying to get into the market at a younger age, whereby you can start paying down that debt, one of the best ways to do that is by having roommates and offsetting your costs that way. Because let's face it, when you're early on in your career, you're not going to be making as much money. So having additional sources of income, such as roommates paying portions of the mortgage, really help offset those costs. And just a final disclaimer, there's a different situation, a different house, different areas for everyone. So talk to your realtor about what options there might be for you, what would be the best option in your situation, because it's going to be a case-by-case basis where we make this assessment. So let's say you've made the decision that homeownership is right for you. So what are the next things you are going to need to get into a property? So the first thing you're going to need to acquire a home is employment verification. So you're going to need to verify A, that you are gainfully employed, and B, that you have the income coming in to afford the mortgage on your property. I have seen some younger buyers that have co-signers on their mortgages, like their parents, to help them get into it. Of course, that does become a little bit more tricky and convoluted when you're getting co-signers. So it needs to be somebody that you trust, but also somebody that trusts you to know that you're not going to destroy their credit if they are signing on that dotted line. But obviously, if you don't have to have a co-signer, that would be the ideal. Another thing you're going to need is a decent credit score. So if you're coming into this at 18, you might not have any credit score yet. You're going to want to start building your credit score up as soon as you can so that you can start getting loans in your name. but otherwise you might again have to look to a co-signer. You're also going to need a 5% down payment. So, and that down payment is on the purchase price of the home. And keep in mind too that you will want to have additional closing costs set aside, usually around 2%, I find will cover it. 2% of the purchase price, I should say. So do you have those at 22 or better yet, 18, and you say, hey, I can do this? Then honestly, I say do it. Get into real estate now. At any point when you are paying monthly for your housing, you are paying somebody's mortgage. It's just a difference of whether or not it's yours or your landlord's. Now, in a market like the one are currently in, where it has been a strong seller's market, buyers are often getting priced out of homes. What used to be affordable for $300,000 or less is very different. A lot of the time, what people can buy at $300,000 might not be in the most ideal location, or it might need repair. However, what I want to stress to all first-time home buyers out there is this is not your forever home. It doesn't need to be perfect. I know that sucks to hear. Everybody wants to buy that perfect starter in a great neighborhood with 3 or 4 bedrooms, etc. But that might not be a reality in the market we are in right now. Doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be in your dream neighborhood at this time. Think of it as more of a stepping stone to get you into your next property that might be getting either into your area and neighborhood, or at least getting you closer to that goal. Think of it this way. In a year where we have had about 20% growth in the values of homes, say you had bought a house in a not so nice area for $300,000, that home today is now worth $360,000. Think about that for a second. That is an additional $60,000 of untaxed money that you now have to propel yourself into the next property. That additional money is pure appreciation at this point. We're not talking about mortgage pay down from your monthly payments. We are talking about sheer appreciation. And if you take advantage of that money to get you into your next property, you are already far ahead of had you tried to save up more of a down payment to get into one of those areas, because you might be a year later and finding things no more affordable because of how much the market has gone up. This is why I believe that buying property at a young age, as young of an age as you can handle though, is the ideal option. It helps you to start taking advantage of appreciation from a younger age within your life, and something that you can continue to propel yourself forward through the rest of your life. So say you're not a huge fan. You're not willing to live in this area in which the homes are affordable for you. Another thing you might want to look at is buying a property with the purposes of it being a rental property only. So perhaps a duplex in a less desirable area in which you now rent out both sides to tenants. I bet you'll have a little bit more money coming in than what it's costing you. So you are truly just having this property that is paying for itself, plus a little bit of cash flow likely in this market, building your wealth. You can use that additional monthly cash flow to either offset your current rent at your current property, or you can start paying down the mortgage on this other property more quickly. But you can live in your current place, continue to pay rent while you have other people start paying you rent. It's a way of at least getting your foot in the door at a price that you can afford while not increasing your monthly payment significantly without any additional monthly cost to you. You are purely starting to just build your own equity while paying down a mortgage. But the best option, in my opinion at least, is what is a popular term called house hacking. And essentially what that is say you're buying that duplex and you are willing to live in one portion of it while you rent the remainder out. So say you have tenants on one side, you're living on the other. You're likely living for cheaper than you would if you had just rented an apartment. A lot of the time the costs make a lot of sense economically. And then as your equity continues continues to build, you can use that equity again to propel yourself toward new property. The greatest thing about real estate are the doors that it really does, like no pun intended, open for you. It really opens your opportunities because of the equity and the net worth potential that you're starting to build here. So in essence, if you can buy a house in your 20s, then I strongly encourage you to do so. I'll give you a quick case in point just to kind of show what I'm talking about here. So I have a client in the city right now that is considering selling the duplex they purchased in 2019. Now, keep in mind, this duplex is not in the best area. It would be considered, truthfully, a more rough area of the city. And what he did was he bought this duplex in 2019. He lived in one half of it. He paid $200,000 for this duplex, which for him made a monthly payment of about $960 in the mortgage payment, I should say. Now his tenant on the other side of the property pays $1,050 per month in rent. So he essentially has his mortgage payment covered. The tenant also pays utilities, so he wouldn't pay those, but he would pay his own utilities. He would still pay insurance, he would still pay property taxes, and of course maintenance costs. But he's living in the property, so house hacking, and maintaining it himself, all while having a tenant covering a huge chunk of his mortgage payment. Now, the first thing to keep in mind here too is that I don't know an apartment that you can rent that is that cheap. He is barely paying anything monthly once with the offsetting of his tenants in the other property. The second thing too is, in his case, his unit is 3 bedrooms. So if he wanted to, he could actually rent out an additional 2 bedrooms and charge per bedroom. Of course, you don't have to do that, but in his case, then he would actually be making money from his primary residence. Anyways, he bought it 3 years ago in 2019 for $200,000. He's now considering moving out of province, so he has called me in to do an evaluation on the property. Given the market over the last 3+ years since he purchased it, my valuation is now coming in at around $260,000. So we are talking about $60,000 of equity gain by this client in 3 years. Of course, these results, I would say, are not typical, but he has obviously taken advantage of the market here. In typical years, he would have still gained equity, it just wouldn't have been to such a substantial extent. Now he's got this equity in this property. He's barely paying anything monthly because the tenant is offsetting his costs. He could actually rent out his portion of the duplex, hang on to it, and move to the other province and just have a property manager here and still be making money on the property, even if you've refinanced out that additional $60,000 to put towards his home in his next province. But he doesn't want to deal with the headache, perhaps, of having a tenant here while he's not here, so which I completely understand. But it's just something to keep in mind, like the amount of equity and wealth he has built just from having this property and having some also financial flexibility too, monthly, because he doesn't have these huge mortgage payments coming at him every month. He is living so lean that he can take not only his income and apply it toward more property, but he can also take that equity growth too and apply it toward more property. So he is in so much stronger of a financial position now than he was in just 3 short years ago. So I want you to take that into perspective. Perhaps, no, you don't want to live in this area. I would say he probably didn't want to live in this area either. It's not the most ideal area, but for 3 years of sacrifice, he has really propelled himself into such a strong financial position on his next property that honestly, I think it was worth it personally, but everybody's different. Everybody else has their own tolerance and risk levels too. But it's just a prime example of one of the many people I've seen use real estate to kind of propel themselves from that first home into their forever home. Because of the market, he could actually skip a step and be in his forever home in his next province, which is great. Usually there would be one more step in there before the forever home, I would say, but he's young and good for him. And that could be you too. His initial investment of 5% on $200,000 has really put him on his journey to financial freedom at a very, very young age. Anyways, if there's anything you're taking away from this video, it is really that I truly believe that you should get into a property and get into it as young as you can. Perhaps that means taking on a friend or a sibling as co-purchasers. Obviously, there's a little bit more involved there, especially like contracts in case the relationship were ever to break down. It's worth it. It's worth it to start building that equity and to start paying off your own mortgage and not somebody else's. Because ultimately in a market like this, the earlier you start, the earlier you can propel yourself into your dream home. So that's my take on it. Yes, start as early as you can. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Again, I'm Jennifer Queen with the Jennifer Queen team and RE/MAX Professionals here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And thank you again for watching. If you found value in this video today, be sure to hit that like button below and subscribe to our channel. We're always coming out with new content, at least weekly. So thanks for watching today, guys.